I don't know, is there some kind of happy medium there or something that we could do or restructure it to where it's, what did you suggest, Jeff?
My reason for it is like, since publicity is something that is essentially inside of what we do.
Yeah,
It seems like that would be the committee that would predominantly come from, but it's not structured that way. That's
So I will treat this essentially as a point of parliamentary inquiry, or a point of information, but I've already talked about what I see as a vision for committees. If you and Mr. Estrada and anyone else who wants us to have a group that focuses on outreach, that can do things, I have a volunteer who has volunteered to go back through all of our literature and rewrite it and modernize it and do that not at cost and not at Mr. Benedict's time. And that was actually kind of a place I was going to put him, but that place doesn't exist anymore. So if you guys wanted to come up with a new committee that's structured not so much as like an LNC heavy thing, but one of these working committees where most of the people are not on the LNC and they do work and they give us back work product, and propose that as a mail ballot and send it to me, I would probably submit it and avoid the need for you guys to get co-sponsors on it.
it will be done.
So that's the best way to do what you're asking if you can do.
Yeah, because like our ED in Louisiana, she had been talking about how she'd like the LNC to maybe have some sort of generic literature that could be geared towards and you know, like templates and things.
Right.
You know, so we could brand it for you know, each state party or however it wanted to be done. So yeah, we'll definitely work on that.
Dr. Feldman?
We do have the committee that does a lot of great work evaluating our materials to make sure that they're on message and approving anything that goes out on the military planning. I wonder, instead of having a different committee, whether our responsibility for developing some outreach materials could be included in that committee, and that might be a place where your volunteer could go in.
No. Only, and I'll tell you because I also am on that list. APRC has a lot of work, just time sensitive. We read more than you guys read. We read a lot of stuff and on deadline. And so I don't want to give the existing APRC any further responsibilities that would make that job harder than it is. It's already plenty hard. APRC obviously be involved because any things that a volunteer working committee would do have to come back through APRC for approval before they can go out. But I appreciate the idea, just it's not a good idea to do to the people who already work on that committee. I see Mr. Estrada and Mr. Weiner nodding, smiling. They disagree on this.
As you said, they're going to have to review the material anyway, so I thought it's a subcommittee or working group under that would be, as opposed to adding to our structure.
That I don't know the answer to. Can an existing committee create a subcommittee just kind of on their own?
They can, but it has to be made up of their own members. If they're going to put people that aren't members of the original committee, they have to get it.
So it would be a little tricky. It's another way to structure it, and you know, we could look at that. Is there any other? So at this point, we would move into 60 minutes for the discussion of goals. At the start of that, with the indulgence of the body, I'd like to recognize Mr. Brown, who's a city council member from the city of Occoquan here in Virginia. He has some things that he'd like to say about, he's an elected Libertarian, he won. And I felt that his input about what he thinks, you know, our goals should be and his experience in being able to win a campaign as an open out Libertarian would be beneficial for the body. So unless there's objection to that, I'd recognize Mr. Brown for 5 minutes. I caught him right when he walked in.
So I was looking for my notes that we made last night. It was a bit late. Say goals.
Early.
Goals is what helped me win, and that's what it's all about. Everybody can see the goal at the end. It's get elected, and it's all the hard stuff in between. It's you set the main goals, getting elected, which I did. And then you got to set your fundraising goals, and you have to accomplish them. And then you have to set your going out and meeting people goals, you know, door to door and stuff like that. And it all came together, you know, at the end. It was a lot of hard work, and with the help of people like Scott Lieberman here, who helped out a lot, we were able to accomplish that. You know, I got dejected halfway through running for this campaign, and it's hard. You know, it takes a lot of. It's really stressful. It's a lot more stressful, I think, than people realize to go through and run a campaign, even for a small town. But we tried, and we just plugged away at it, and you know, without setting the goals for winning and the fundraising and the PR, I guess would be goal, none of this would be possible. So the motivate. Sorry, I had all this written down. Left it up in my room. But what was I saying? The motivation. Yeah, can't lose sight of your goals. You just got to keep working at them. Okay, when I practice, yeah. Tell me right as soon as I walked in. Okay,
Do you want to take 5 minutes and
can
go
I
back and
go get my notes?
Absolutely.
I'm so sorry, guys.
No worries.
I hate wasting everybody's time.
This is an open book, open note meeting. Absolutely.
Then, at this point, we'll move into a more structured discussion of goals. I know most of the LNC members were here for the sort of informal discussion, and Dr. Lark has given some ideas, Mr. Benedict's given some ideas. We've had some email discussion, but I'd like to spend this time focusing down on not too many goals for us, so that we can clearly say to ourselves, this is a thing that would get us here, and this is a thing that wouldn't get us here. And that is helpful to me as your chair, and to Mr. Benedict as your executive director, is if we have clear and measurable goals, we can prioritize tasks to say, this is a priority and this is not. Beyond that, I would just open it up to the body for suggestions or of what the goals ought to be. I'll start with Dr. Larkin and Mr. Warren.
Mr. Chairman, do you want me to put forward a motion? I actually suggested 5 goals. Would you like to have a formal motion that can be amended, or would you prefer to start with a less parliamentary formal discussion? In the past, there have been times where discussions of goals and then strategies actually proceeded first with a less formal discussion and then formal motion.
My preference would be to proceed with a less formal discussion, but more focused than yesterday, where basically, as part of your less formal remarks, you tell the body what specific measurable goals you would put in the motion, and we essentially get some level of consensus about these are things that might fly and these are things that might not, before we have a motion we're actually debating, and then we're into amending, not amending, getting levels beat. Mr. Bora?
I'll just go to what I think should be what would be my first recommendation for a specific goal. I think.
Pardon me, excuse me, Mr. Is there some way we can have these recorded in a way? I don't know if the secretary
Project on the screen.
can project on screen. Would that be?
That, if that would be helpful to the body, then we can make that happen. Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Bora, sorry.
Sure. So the goal that I would recommend adding to this list would be 1,500 candidates that are on message, as in they've gone through a Who's Driving style training or some equivalent training. And I believe that with our combination of our use of our email list to at least solicit that. I mean, at this point, we haven't really even gotten around to using our email list to actually even ask. You know, just like what Mark Hinkle had said in our last meeting, the #1 rule of fundraising is you have to ask. And I think the #1 rule of our getting 1,500 candidates who are on message is that we have to ask again and again until we get 1,500 candidates that are on message. And that can be 1,500 candidates for city councils, it can be 1,500 candidates it can be 1,500 candidates for any number of things, but 1,500 candidates on message is an achievable goal that we can certainly get done, and that will put us in a dramatically more effective marketing position than we currently are.
Dr. Larkin?
I'm sorry, Mr. Bora, do you mean 1,500 candidates in 2016? Do you mean 1,500 candidates?
I'm sorry, I meant in 2016.
Thank
Um,
Question.
yeah, go ahead.
What do you mean on message?
I mean that they've gone through some type of training like Who's Driving, where they're talking about specific us to government, with the specific benefits associated with those cuts. As in not just saying they're going to vaguely adhere to libertarian principles, because even Rand politics say that, but saying things like they will abolish the Department of Education and here's why that's beneficial, or they'll bring the troops home and here's why that's beneficial, or they'll end the war on drugs and here's why that's beneficial. Those, I don't think that's a too huge a thing to ask. I don't think that it's a very difficult thing to achieve necessarily. And it's something that's entirely under our control. We can't control what people. Oh, I wouldn't say that in order to be a candidate, you would have to go through the training. I mean, it could be 20,000 candidates with 1,500 that have gone through the training. Who the candidate is still obviously up to the state party. Now, I mean, we don't really have any direct control over any part of that except for presidential.
I just want to ask a question. If the candidate felt like Who's Driving wasn't a working training for them, but going to the Leadership Institute or doing something else where they actually do campaign training, would that meet your goal or would that not meet your goal?
As long as that training involved having a specific, unique selling proposition, and ours, as far as I know, is cutting government and advancing liberty. Sure, I mean, it's not. And that's why I said Who's Driving or something equivalent. Something that just says, you should be polite to people. Well, that's something that the Democrats and Republicans can do too. I mean, anybody can do that. But a training that says, this is what we do, which is we cut government, and here's how we present it, and here's why it's good. And if the Who's Driving style isn't for something, that's totally fine. But as long as it has that, I think very critical element, I'd be in favor of it.
So I have Mr. Tommaso next, I believe.
Sure, you go next.
I just to follow through. I have no problem as long as we're specific and we come up with a list and not just say something equivalent, but let's come up with a list and a number. So our number is 1,500, and then the list of training programs, which includes Who's Driving, which may or may not include the Liberty
Leadership
Institute, because we want to have an objective and we want to know for certain whether we met the goal or not.
Mr. Tommaso?
Yeah, going on the theme of yesterday, of things we can control, I do think a completely updated outreach literature is absolutely essential, preferably issues-based. I know I've talked about this with the affiliate support committee last term. Maybe that can be a conduit for some of this, because that's where it's going to get used at the affiliate level. I think issues-based, completely redo everything would be because we got modern issues that don't apply to the suppliers from the 1980s that we still use sometimes. I also think a good goal, if we want to talk about it, is goals for the presidential campaign, particularly getting ready for it. Obviously, we can't pick the candidate, we don't know who it is, but I think realistically, we need to be putting in place a tool so they can get at least 2 million votes out of 2016. And I did the math, and between the convention and election day, that means they have to earn about 14,000 votes a day. So I think we need to be thinking about what tools can we put in place as a party to make sure our flagship campaign is going to be able to bump up to that next benchmark to show that we're growing. So I don't know if we want to put something like a vote total or vote minimum, I should say, for presidential campaigns, but if you want to talk about something to put in place for that, I think that's a good goal.
I think I have Mr. Redpath and Mr. McMahon and Mr. McClendon and Mr. Olson. That is the order as I would call this. Mr. Redpath.
I'll state it as briefly as I can here regarding. I'm not at all enthusiastic about even considering goals.
Okay.
I'm not. And I know that people think, oh, you got to have goals and you got to, and I've been through that. I'm too seasoned so many times and seen so little come from that I'm just skeptical about goals. I'm very skeptical about numeric goals. 1,500, why not 1,000? 1,000 would be good. It would be a big step up. We've got a good number of this year, 700. We want more, certainly. 1,000, why not 1,000? 1,500, why not 2,000? I mean, I don't know. So I just and strategic planning. I've been through so many strategic plans, and the Libertarian Party, the National Party, I believe about a dozen years ago, spent $80,000. I didn't, but I believe it was $80,000 on strategic planning where people were, their airfares were paid for, their hotels were paid for, and and what came of it was a plan that said was something that some people said was not strategic, was not a plan. And I will tell you, I didn't think much of the whole plan. I don't think much of any strategic plan. It doesn't talk about changing the election system in the United States to some sort of proportional representation of legislatures. That seems to me one of the most important things possible to go into minor parties' strategic plan. So I will now shut up and mainly listen. I will comment once in a while, but I'm just not sure what's going to come of all this. But
Mr. McMahon, Mr. Olson, or Mr. McClendon, then Mr. Olson.
Wanted to just comment on Mr. Fuller's goal. You know that I'm all about candidate training and candidates being on message. It's the thing that irritates me the most about campaigns is when it's all off message.
Speak up.
Speak up.
Sorry. The reality is, this year we have 700 candidates.
775.
775. And a good portion of them are paper candidates that aren't doing anything. We're doing the absolute bare minimum. How do we increase that within 2 years to 1,500 when there are many states who are struggling to get 19 candidates to run?
Can I respond?
Briefly.
Honestly, I think that even a paper candidate on message is extremely valuable because a paper candidate on message is still getting $30,000 to $50,000 worth of free advertising. So on message advertising, because remember, our goal eventually isn't to get necessarily elected. Our goal is to get rid of the departments of education and labor and homeland security and bring the troops home. So I think that would help us with that, with the true libertarian goal.
I have Mr. McClendon.
That's for follow-up point.
No. Mr. McClendon?
Yeah.
Only no because you've already spoken and we're going to get around to it.
Point of personal privilege.
Yes.
I find the term paper candidate offensive. I've met a lot of candidates, and I've never met one who was made out of paper. If we have an excellent person who's willing to put his time and effort and name in front of, to get his name on the ballot, I think we should show appreciation, and we should value those people, because guess what? Some of them are going to win. Thank you.
I prefer the term educational candidate. But I'd like to see a goal that says 1,000 candidates in 2016. The problem, a concern that I have with the existing proposal is that it's not measurable. And I think that any goal needs to be extremely easy to measure. And what we have here is basically two different goals mixed into one, and you basically have something you can't easily measure. I like the intent of the two goals that are inherent. But okay, so in addition, similar to, I think that the own message aspect of this and the who's driving should be quantified at how many sessions of the who's driving you give. And so divide those two questions so that you've now got an opportunity for a numerical, simple to measure 1,000 candidates. We should also put a number on like how many sessions of who's driving do we want to give during this year. And those two are separate and independent, but they'll merge together to accomplish your intent. But you've now divided it into two things that are very easy to measure. And they just have to watch, like two hands watching together to achieve your intent. So the number of sessions, I would ask what's reasonable.
Ms. Howell wants to respond to that.
Actually, I was not going to respond specifically to that.
Okay.
Yeah. I would like to ask, what is a reasonable number for the number of sessions of who's driving?
Now she's going
I can answer that.
question. She'll respond.
Yeah. You can never take it too many times. It's really an issue of reprogramming our brains is what we're doing when we're playing this game, because we've all been conditioned to accept big government as the norm, accept that it must keep going up, and if we're just fighting against increases, then we're doing God's work, and there's nothing more than that we can do. So I don't think there's a specific limit. I think it's a matter of, when a person puts it on their website and starts speaking it habitually every time they're in public. Now they've really trained themselves to be on message.
But how many sessions do we do now?
20% more than you did last year.
I've seen people, second time, it usually takes them 2 times, 2 rounds, and they get it
Wrong question.
whole. Other people take 5.
How many times have we given the training?
Oh,
Last year.
including the online sessions, 30 maybe. Not a lot, really. I mean, a lot of candidates never played it at all.
36
Played it
sessions.
once and didn't really do enough to get the swing of it. So in terms of the number of candidates who played at least 2 rounds and started to get the swing of it, somewhere between 50 and 100. Does that sound right, Arvin? I'm not quite sure.
Probably around the 1,500 candidates have taken the training in 30 sessions approximately.
Okay, so
Direct from national.
Is there a state affiliate?
50 to 100?
Could be 100. Well, yeah, it's
Okay,
probably
so-
a little over 100.
So the measure is how many candidates?
I-
Not sessions, but measure the number of candidates.
Right, because sometimes the sessions have more than one candidate in them.
They almost always
Yeah.
do, so.
Okay.
Bigger session.
So, if I'm buying a stock and if it breaks 15% growth, I'm happy,
Okay.
okay? That's my number. So, if we say 50 to 175 times 1.2, you know, and round, you
What'd you say?
know, say 75 times 1.2 is 75 plus 15, 85, 90. 90 candidates trained in who's trying.
Okay.
I have another.
Carl, I'll get to you. I want to kind of go in order a little bit. So I have Mr. Olson, then Ms. Howell, then Mr. Goldson. So Mr. Olson.
Okay, as I said yesterday, our ultimate goal is to win. If we don't have that as our ultimate goal, if we don't demonstrate that that's our ultimate goal by our actions or plans or whatever, we're living a lie. You have 100, let's say out of 775, we've got at least 50 that are active candidates that are walking the district, that are pumping up personal funds, that are ignoring their family because they believe in what we're doing. And if we don't have a strategy to win, it's all a sham. Okay, so we need to do, as part of whatever we come up with here, I have to agree with Bill that just throwing up goals by 1,000 candidates, what are you gonna do to get 1,000 candidates? That's what we need now, because this is a step in the right direction. We're going to use who's driving to get them well messaged. Now that's an action, that's something that we can do, that's something that, said, this is the action we're gonna take, and our goal is to get 90 candidates. But just saying 1,000 candidates, in the first place, we don't even get to do that, states get to do that. So what I would like to see is we proceed, not so much goals, but specific actions, activities that we want to emphasize. And perhaps by December, we can have some specific plans in place to, number one, demonstrate that we will be, our goal is to actually win. How we structure that, are we gonna give candidates money, or are we gonna give money to the LNCC, or are we going to do something else, or whatever, but we have to demonstrate that if you're running an exceptional campaign, that you're in an exceptional position, whether it be, a very unpopular incumbent running against an unknown and whatever criteria we come up with, we need something built in that says if there is a winnable race out there, we are going to be involved and we're going to help make that win happen. And I think to get to that point, the important thing is not so much 1,000 candidates, but is organizational strength. I represent 9 affiliates, and there's not one of those 9 affiliates that has a budget that's higher than $1,000 a month. You can't run an organization if all you've got is a telephone number and a mailbox. So we need to build the organizational strength of our affiliates. So if we there's an action that we can take basically to try to meet the 1,000 candidates. It's the affiliates that put the candidates on the ballot. We don't even put the presidential, we select a presidential candidate, but we don't put them on the ballot. States have to put them on the ballot. It's the affiliates. So the heart and soul of the organization, so I'd like to see actions based on those two things. Number one, that there's a winning campaign out there, we have this mechanism in place so that we can support that candidate. And everybody knows what it is. And I don't know exactly how to do that. Whether it be LNCC, some other organization, or some project that we have. And the second,
Let's see here. And the mentality, yeah, this was a big one. When I was running and I lost sight, of what I wanted to get done. It's all about, I had to get refocused 2 or 3 times, and just you lose track because you're not achieving your goals fast enough, and then a lot of people just stop and give up, and then you have to get back into the game, and you have to change your mentality, and there's nobody there, really, pushing you to do it, because when you lose your momentum, it's just hard to get it back, So once I eventually got that back, and I'm starting the momentum for other candidates, I've won, others can win, bigger offices, and I think the main goal for me is I want to change the whole government. I want to make it small where it's not in everybody's business. And to do that, I've got to win a town council election so somebody else can win a city council election or a county commissioner job. And then state delegate, and it all just starts here and goes down. And I'm trying to start, and I think that these are all pretty good. They look like good goals to me, but implementation is the hard part. And I just wanted to say thanks to everybody for having me here, and thanks a lot for your support. Bill helped out with my campaign also with moral support and donation. I really appreciate that. And I just want to say thanks to all libertarians because they're all very helpful. And with all of your help and some good goals and implementation of the goals, we can go very far, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go out of order and recognize Mr. Weiner because he has not spoken yet. Then Mr. McMahon doesn't want to be recognized again. So then I'll go Mr. Weiner, then I will Mr. McClendon want to be recognized again, and Mr. Redpath. So Mr. Weiner.
Well, to some extent, I have some sympathy with what Bill was saying and other people regarding goals. The idea in principle of having goals is that you want to establish metrics so you can measure how well you are succeeding at something. Many of our things are the type of goals where you want as much as possible, you want as many members as possible, as many candidates, as much publicity and so on. It's the nature of our organization. And trying to set numerical numbers on that type of thing, much of which is not directly under our control, to me seems a bit of a digression. There are some things that are very measurable, and in fact we do measure them, and particularly by our budget. We budget how much we're going to spend on various things, and throughout the year we're measuring how far off we are in revenue and spending and so on. Things that staff does are often very measurable as far as their specific tasks go and so on, and a large part of the chair's job and as a body, this LNC, is making sure that that staff is working effectively and accomplishing their various tasks. That's a management issue, and those are the kinds of goals that businesses use as far as determining how effective their employees are. Are they accomplishing their tasks? Are they creative? Doing things in an efficient manner and so on, and that's all fine and good. But I think we need to be careful about throwing out goals like X number of candidates and X number of members and such. We want to be as efficient as successful as possible. And again, from what I was saying yesterday, our main limitation in this party, we could do so much more, we could accomplish so much more, and we're limited mainly by our resources. So obviously we want to raise as much money as possible, and when you talk about things like members, that is one of the ways that we obtain revenue, by increasing our membership and getting more members' dues, more pledges, more donors, and so on. But from an external viewpoint, we want our libertarian ideas to permeate society and to achieve the overall goal of a freer society. And to the extent that that our ideas are gaining traction in the general world, that is the main measure of our success. There are different ways that we achieve that traction. Electing candidates, obviously, where we can, but running candidates who obtain a sufficient percentage of the vote and sufficient media attention that the public becomes aware of libertarian ideas is a large part of that, and we're making progress there. But I think we need to be careful about just trying to go out there and set goals, and then we come back next year and we set new goals, and nothing ever happens because we specifically set a goal of 1,500 members or something, or 1,500 candidates. That's all.
All right, so I'm going to go a little out of order because there's some people who want to be recognized who have not previously spoken on this topic. I'm going to go Ms. Mattson, Mr. Hayes, Mr. Estrada, then Mr. McLennan, then Mr. Redpath. How are we doing on time, though? It looks like we have
25 minutes to go.
Okay. So Ms. Mattson?
Okay, so I'm gonna add to what, put on the list as a proposal, Scott's idea. 38 state party status. Alright. If you end up with 38 state party status, ballot access, and I didn't say major party because there are a lot of states where we can qualify as minor parties, and I think it's just judge who get the label. Just think about the amount of money that's going to save us going forward. But once we attain that, and when you add the party status, I think from that it's easier to get the candidates and grow those other numbers that we want to close anyway. And if this were our only goal, what would that do? That would refocus staff on sure we want as many candidates as possible, but find the key candidates for those retention races. Focus on those, train those people, and it's less overhead work. Focus on a smaller number and get a lot bigger bang for the effort, I think. So I'm going to add that to the list.
Mr. Hayes?
Yeah, I think we need to get a better idea and understanding of what the purpose of the goal setting is. As Mr. Olson pointed out, he's basically talking about what the ultimate goal is. And Stephen Covey talks about 7 habits of highly effective people. You need to begin with the end in mind. The end is getting candidates elected. So that's the end thing. Now the question is, how do you get there? Now we've got some, but we're not getting enough candidates elected. So that doesn't keep people motivated. Having some of these other metrics, these are things that we can shoot for along the way that are achievable. Because it's disheartening when people put everything they can into candidates' campaigns and then they get very low percentages. So these are things, it's about moving things along and having things there that we can reach, we can achieve. So having, these number goals like 1,000 candidates running or 38 affiliates, those are things that are measurable. And that's on the path to the end goal of getting candidates elected. And coming back every year and resetting the goals, that's fine. That's actually part of goal setting. Goal setting actually should occur, and it should be fluid and dynamic. It should change as the environment changes. We need to be not be stuck in that, and if it looks like things are going to be better, then we reevaluate and set the goal higher. If things are not working in that direction, we maybe set it a little lower or redirect in a different direction. In Louisiana, with us having party registration, one thing that I put a lot of emphasis on is registering more people as libertarians. Now, we want people to be philosophically libertarian, but a lot of times when somebody puts that L on their chest, that might get their interest up there, but maybe not. But when they walk into the voting booth and they think, hey, I'm a libertarian, and then they'll vote for those candidates, because the unfortunate nature of the beast is we are going to have people that are not fully philosophically libertarian voting for our candidates if they're going to win. And that's what the goal is, winning. So we need to get more people exposed to the libertarian philosophy, and so having people out there and having them talking about Rand as a libertarian, it's problematic, but it does help us because it makes it to where libertarian is not a bad word anymore, which the brand has been damaged over time, but that's not the case anymore. It's not getting to be a bad word. Everybody's saying it. So with that end in mind of getting candidates elected, registering in my state, that helps us. From there, we can convince more people to vote for our candidates. We can get more candidates to run. From there, we can get more donations. For us, registration is what solves all the other problems. Now, I realize not every state is in that same situation, but it's a numbers game. We need more people identifying themselves as libertarians. So I think we need to not get too concerned with having these benchmarks like this that we sometimes don't hit, because they are on the path to that end goal of getting libertarians elected. And that's what we need to focus on.
Mr. Estrada?
I'm going to combine some ideas. Your idea of working committees, beautiful idea. Mr. Goldstein's idea of people championing their own goals. And why don't we set those metrics inside of committees? And it's already kind of formulaic as it is. Mr. McClendon is putting out that he wants 90 candidates trained in who's driving, which filters through affiliate support. Myself and Mr. Hayes are talking about revamping outreach and publicity. We set up metrics inside of that of what we're going to accomplish, and we're championing that idea. Mr. Goldstein and Mr. Tomaso are setting up their goals inside of their committee. Kind of if we refocus this as committees that are working committees, if they're working, they need to have goals and they need to have the metrics. So regardless of whether we have broad overall goals, let's take this idea and place it at that level and follow through all the way down.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Mr. McClendon and Mr. Redpath in that order, but as I think everyone who's wanted to speak has already spoken, I'm going to officially hand the gavel off to Arvin. I don't have a gavel, but he theoretically does, because I just want to let the committee know kind of what I would like to see. The reason I want to come out of this with goals is this. I feel that I am responsible. At the end of the day, I'm responsible for whether or not the party's successful going into 2016. And so I want a clear vision for, should the delegates reelect me in 2016 or should they not? I want a test. I want to know whether or not I've succeeded. So what I want to come out of a goal discussion is I want measurable things that are within the control of work that I can do and work that the national staff can do in my direction. I don't want you to come up with goals that I can't do anything about, because then that's not a good test for me. The ideas that I've had about goals, and I agree, there should be goals for working committees that are the same thing. Should this person be on that working committee anymore? Because did they pass the test that they set for themselves, or at least show that there's progress towards it? The other reason I need to have goals, and I'll make goals even if you guys don't make them. I'll have my own goals and I'll be public about them, and I'll make a test for myself, is that the biggest problem we have is what Mr. Wiener talked about. We don't have enough resources to do everything. And there are things that we don't do well and probably should stop doing so we can do the things we want to do well. So we don't want a lot of goals, because I need to be able to sit down with Wes and say, look, we're gonna do this because it goes towards 38 party ballot access. And we're not gonna do this other thing because it doesn't go that direction or towards any of our other goals. It keeps me focused, and all of the implementation stuff, all of the details, I see that as sort of strategic stuff that happens either at the executive committee or directly between me and the staff about these are the specific things we'll do to get there. But I can't make a plan and a strategy, because I don't like strategy sessions either. But I can't make a strategy unless I know where I'm trying to get to. And that's what I want to come out of the LNC setting goals, is where you as a body want me and the party to get to. The ideas that I've had, I talked to Wes about it a little bit. I like having a goal of some number of candidates in 2016. And I like having, I do like Mr. McClendon's idea of having a goal of some number of candidates and having a different goal of some percentage or number of candidates are going through who's driving, and it's more than we've done before. I like having a goal of a specific member number in 2015. Now, I understand that a revenue goal is probably more directly related to success, but a member number is something that we can look at as a target and get creative about ways to get there.
Do you mean sustaining members?
Sustaining, well, Wes and I have talked about that a little bit because, you know, there are creative things that we haven't done in years. I saw a 1972 New York Times article that somebody brought to the LNC headquarters, and in the middle paragraph of the announcement of a new party formed in Denver is one of the plans to increase membership is a $6 student membership. This is a great idea that we had at the very outset of the party, and you know, sometimes we're interested in stuff like that, and sometimes it goes by the wayside and the next LNC doesn't want to do it. But if membership's a goal, then we can get creative about proposals for discounted memberships for students, or you know, we only email them, we don't send them a paper copy of LP News, so they don't cost us money. We can get there if we know that that's a target we're trying to get to. We could have a revenue goal. If you wanted to say, you know, the goal is we are a 2 million revenue party in the next presidential year, that's a good one too. Those are measurable. One sort of out there goal that I've thought about, but I think, you know, is a legit goal for our party is I don't know the answer, but whatever the median age is of our member, it needs to go down by 5 years, like period. And, you know, it's harder to measure, but demographically, we need to be a more diverse party than we are. Those are personal goals, and some of them aren't easy to measure, but that's what I'm hoping to get out of this discussion, is that the LNC gives me clear direction that these are the things that we want you to do. These are the places where we as an entire body would feel successful going into 2016 and fight for our jobs. So I'll take the gavel back now, unless you have questions. So Mr. McClendon?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of new people here, and I've been here 4 years, and I'm still not sure. I would like to say, yeah, I want you to meet your goal. We want to set some goals, and we want to meet them as a committee, and we hope that you will keep them and achieve your goals. I'd like to get something back or explain to the rest of us on the committee about, you know, how are we going to go about doing some of these things? I've got great ideas. Oh, okay. So, is there a procedure that needs to be followed? How does one go about doing that other than just beating everybody over on the head?
Go about. What do you mean, is there a procedure to be followed as far as you have ideas or like the plan?
Yeah. The budget meeting is going to go down in December, so we have 2 or 3 months. And we have certain committees, but what I want to do is outside one of these committees.
then come to me with the idea and we'll get it done. That's the procedure. Mr. McClendon?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to mention, like, if I'm at a refinery and I'm gonna build a $100 million project, I've got a goal, you know, to build that unit, and I've got to have production metrics. So goals work together with metrics as a tool to guide you in your progress as you're building the unit. So, Bill, every time you go to a new state to petition, you've got a goal. The Secretary of State tells you what it is, and you've got a goal every time. Just saying. Now, those two goals up there is a lot bigger than one person. It's a lot bigger than the Affiliate Support Committee. In Texas, when we set goals under the guidance of Mr. Dixon, we'd always have a champion or champions. I would recommend, like myself, maybe in not just myself, but the Affiliate Support Committee in Arbon, perhaps, being the two people responsible for both of those goals of 1,000 candidates and 90. Obviously, with cooperation with Carla, we're a team here, not just one person. So I would recommend we list specific champions. In this case, that's a broad goal, so it's going to have multiple champions, but not too many, because otherwise you don't have a specific point of responsibility, which is what the intent with Mr. Dixon's thing was. And so I'm just pointing out that I'm prepared to, at least for my part, take some ownership of that. And second, the idea of Mr. Hayes and Jay of the outreach, I mean, that's all part of affiliate support, which is where the actual action, the work happens is with the affiliates. We're just kind of enabling them, if you will. I'd consider rolling the work of the literature updates as part of the affiliate support committee, because they're really the users of that product, and that's actually an idea that I heard from Wendy of Louisiana. There were some needs that the affiliates have already expressed. Downloads of editable files and so forth, that in cooperation with the IT committee. I have in mind the affiliate support will have a liaison to the IT committee, and the two committees will have to work together to accomplish a lot of these goals. So that's all I have.
Mr. Redpath? Are we on time first?
We are 10 minutes to go.
Okay, well, that's good.
First of all, I am not against all goals. I'm not sure what I guess I object to is the formality. For instance, take Tyler Brown here. I mean, first of all, the Libertarian Party of Virginia is a beggar, not a chooser, when it comes to candidates. This man came forward, said, I want to run. He could run for anything. He said, I would be like, yeah, man, can you fog a mirror?
Just
kidding. But he came forward. He didn't want to run for higher office. He wanted to run for town council. Fantastic. More power to him. All right. But this was achievable. Occoquan has a population, according to Wikipedia, of 934. All right. There was a town council election. There were, correct me if I'm wrong, there were 6 candidates for 5 seats. Winning was achievable. If there had just been one winner out of 6 seats, I don't know, it would have been a lot tougher. We had a goal this year. It was not a formal goal. It was sort of an informal goal that everybody kind of sort of knew, because Rob Sarvis had spoken that we were aiming to get all 11 U.S. House candidates. We fell short. But I think people sort of knew that was a goal that we were aiming for. In Illinois, you are correct, Guy. And when I went to Illinois for Memorial Day week, I had a personal goal of doing 500 gross cigs. I did 663 in 4 days. So there are goals sometimes that are worthwhile. Some goals are not. What I object to, I think the word metrics is overrated, because some goals can be qualitative in nature. They really aren't measurable, but they're still important. An example would be, although we can't necessarily enforce this, but to ask our states, for instance, this whole paper candidate thing. Wes, you told me once in Texas, and I think there are some candidates that they sign a piece of paper in Texas. That's all it takes in Texas to get on the ballot. We're not as fortunate in Virginia. But it is my understanding there are some people who sign a form that they're a candidate and then proceed to do nothing else for the rest of the campaign. Wes is shaking, he told me this in the past. Thank
Over a
you.
million votes. Several got over a million votes.
That did nothing.
Yes.
That did not.
Spent $0, 0 cents.
Well, all right, and tell me what I was gonna say.
We need more people candidates.
What I was going to say is that we should ask the states, candidates should prepare on the issues. They should do 3 things at least. If a reporter calls, return the call or speak to the reporter. If you're invited to a forum, go to the forum. And I know some people won't agree with the third one. If you get a survey, fill it out. Okay? And you don't want to raise. If you don't, some people won't agree with that. I know, but I do think it's important. If you get a survey, fill it out to the best of your ability. Send it in. At least do that as a candidate. At least put some effort forward. Don't do nothing unless you get over a million votes.
Get a website.
So anyway, so that's my comment.
I'm gonna recognize.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have one other comment.
Go
We
ahead.
want a revenue goal, 2 million in 2015. There you go.
15.
2015?
Yeah, because some of this, I mean, you say you want
Oh, that's
measurable
true.
things.
That's true.
You want measurable things.
That's-
Hey, the next
that's
election
a
is
goal.
before
Whole year.
for charities before the end of
Yeah,
2016,
make a solid
in case you didn't know. And a lot of this, includes the second half of the year 2016, which will be after the next chair's
I
election.
understand. So I'm gonna recognize Dr. Lieberman from the gallery without objection because he has not spoken on this yet. And then I'll go to Mr. Olson and then Mr. Tomaso. And then, sorry, I'll go to Mr. Vora, then Mr. Olson, and Mr. Tomaso. You did want to be recognized, so you did say something first. So go ahead, Dr. Lieberman.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm going to use my visual aid here. Okay, switch over. So,
Visual aids.
yeah, I'll show you. This is FCLP.org. This is the candidates we're running in California. I've taken 0 credit for any of these candidates. I did not do any of this candidate recruiting. And of course, you know we have top 2 in California, which means that the chance of libertarians, the number of libertarians who are appearing on the ballot in November for partisan races is going to be very, very small. As in, we have, I'm not sure how Mr. Hogan got onto the ballot for state assembly. I'm glad he did. He must have probably running against I'm not sure which district it is, running either against Republican or Democrat only. Now, Mark DePaula, Sequoia healthcare district, I'm going to say he has maybe a 20% chance of getting elected. It's kind of a large district. Alex Fidel, Mayor of Encinitas, probably not. That mayor is a pretty large city. Costa Mesa Sanitarian District, that guy has somewhat of a chance of winning, but it's kind of a large district. But it's a sanitary district, so it's kind of relatively unimportant. So we're not talking about like city council or something. Apple Valley City Council is possible. Fairfield City Council is kind of a large city. Sequoia Healthcare District. This guy, Jack Hickey, is an incumbent. I think he's running for his 4th term, so he probably has a pretty good chance of winning that election. Peninsula Healthcare District, Doug Radke, he ran for Millbrae City Council last time. Yeah, I don't know, maybe a 20% chance of winning, because that's kind of a large district. Aaron is running for Oxnard City Council. Of course, it's a very large town, but he has a very good chance of winning because he's raised a lot of money. Miranda County Healthcare District, it's kind of a large county, maybe he has a chance. Lake Forest City Council, that's a small county, probably has a chance. Westwell, he was on the school board in Ocean View before, so probably has a chance of getting back on that school
He's a
board.
firecracker. He's gonna.
Yeah, right.
My name like
That's the end of yourself. Yeah. Okay, Matt, that's all. I've already Colorado. Sorry.
name is Firecracker.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So that's it. My point being that in California, we probably have a chance of getting, I don't know, 3 or 4 victories, maybe 5 victories out of that. Okay. There are about 500,000 elected officials in the country. Right now, I don't know the exact numbers, about 147 elected libertarians. Now, I appreciate Ms. Mattson bringing up the fact of having 38 state ballot access in December 16 as a single goal. But if you do choose to take more than one goal, more than that goal as other goals, and you're going to have a goal of having a number of candidates, which we don't have direct control over as a national party. We have some control, but not direct control. Then you might as well, in addition to having a candidate goal, have an elected official goal. I was going to suggest if you're going to have more than one goal and you're going to take the candidate goal, how about going from 147 that we have now to say 200 elected officials in December of 2016? I mean, actually, maybe that should be doable. So that's just a suggestion.
Mr. Vora, then Mr. Redpath's about to tell me we're almost out of time.
I just wanted to say I want to adopt the nickname Cherry Bomb. But,
Can you have that added?
3 minutes to go.
All right, so Mr. Vora is going to keep it brief, and then
Yeah,
Mr.
I'll
Olson,
keep it
if you
very
can keep it brief.
I think that we need to keep in mind our meta goal, which is to cut government. I think we can make a goal about that. And my goal would be the elimination of one cabinet level federal agency by 2016, because we are able to force ideas through even without being elected. And if we get people behind, I mean, the number of people who want to get rid of the Department of Education, that is not just Libertarians, that's also Republicans. And I think that if we make that front and center and put a lot of marketing behind it, we can make the elimination of one federal cabinet level agency by 2016.
Point of information, does the Export-Import Bank count?
Yes.
This may be more achievable or not. Mr. Olson and then Dr. Lark, I think you did want to be recognized again, is that correct?
If there's time, go ahead.
Sorry.
We're left.
Sorry, you were,
I was after one.
okay, sorry.
I'd just like to ask Sam and Rich to produce some numerical goals for the IT project. In other words, here, associate a good goal with some action.
What's a numerical goal for an IT committee though, Norm?
I mean, how many website hits do we get a day? And
That's not,
we step by
we're not
step.
looking, that's not our purveyance. That's
Don't
not our-
spend over $50,000.
Good job, Wes. That's
I don't know. Surely, there's probably got to be something there that I would like to see. How about increasing the number of new members that we get from the internet by 10%?
That's not our job.
So, wait,
No, but your job is to revert the platform, and
I'm gonna call
hopefully
the
the
crosstalk
objective
out
of
of
that is to make it better.
all right, we have 1 minute left, Mr. Tomaso.
Yeah, one thing this discussion reminded me of a lot of things. My own experience of creating new political organizations is that success is what brings growth and what attracts activity. Whatever goals we say, hey, we met a goal, great. The funders like it, the activists like it, so that's really what we got to be thinking. And I also, and this is a meta thing, but maybe we should start thinking, pretend the LP just started this year. What would we do? What are our core functions? Because we want to do all these goals, we're going to have to focus on our mission. I mean, think about it. Like, really, if we only had, $1 million instead of $1.5 million, what would we do? What's the most important? Because we're going to have to make some tough decisions. And lastly, one thing I did notice is it's better to do a few things very well than a bunch of things half-assed. So that kind of focus, I mean, if we could say, we raised, any one of those, I think our members would be happy with. If we can do 2 or 3, that'd be great, but we're not going to probably do the 10,000 things we all want to do. So I think really focusing and prioritizing, this is going to come up in December when we budget. But wherever we're successful at is really going to be the metric of how much we grow. And we got to pick those goals very carefully.
Time has expired. There are a couple more people who want to speak, and we burned all the time in the less formal discussion. My suggestion would be that we would take another 30 minutes on this item. It's now 10:07.
Objection.
Noted. And that the method that we use for selecting the goals, such as they have been suggested, would be some type of voting with some type of limit on the number of goals that can be chosen. I don't want to ram that down everyone's throat, but Rich's point is well taken that you can't do everything. Is there a length of time that would not be objected to, Mr. Redpath?
10 minutes.
Dr. Lark?
Inquiry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Are you wasn't clear from your comment. Are you suggesting that these are the only ones we're considering, or can one move for additional consideration?
I think if we are able to extend time, that if one wanted 4 things on the list for consideration to choose a number of them, you could all choose all of them if you really wanted to, and just make my job real hard. Then immediately in that extension, that would be the appropriate time to be recognized to add some things to the list. Mr. Wiener, is this a point of inquiry or?
Yeah, as a procedural suggestion.
Yes.
That after we add, for example, Dr. Lark's goals to the list, that before we have any formal motions, we do some informal polling on each of the listed items to begin to get some rough idea of whether there's consensus on some of them.
So here's the procedure that I think might work for everybody, is that we will extend time for 10 minutes in order to focus on just adding things to the list that may not be on the list. That we would then recess for 10 minutes to talk amongst ourselves about what things are likely to make it through and not likely to make it through, as Mr. Wiener suggested. Then we would come back to actually do some type of voting procedure. Is that acceptable to the body? Ms. Mattson, is that acceptable to you?
That's acceptable to me. I was gonna suggest that when we get time, get to the point where we're ready to select goals, that we do basically approval voting on them, so we have a rank of what goals we like the most.
Okay.
And then we have a prioritization. If you're gonna have more than one goal, you can limit it to 3 goals or whatever, but you've got a prioritization. What has the most support, you know, the most important goals. And it's not just a list of goals, it's a prioritized goals.
Mr. McPath?
I would say that what I would suggest is 10 minutes discussion, 10 minutes recess, come back with approval voting, and then those with the majority of getting a majority of the committee, then we skinny it down from that if we want to.
Is there any objection to that kind of procedure? I know we're in like magic limbo if we're not even using time right now.
And that this will be completed within the whole process will be completed within 30 minutes.
Second. All right, so that's just what this is a little informal, that's just what we're gonna do. So we're now extended for 10 minutes, please keep me on task.
I will.
And we'll first recognize Dr. Lark, then Mr. Hagan, then Mr. Olson. Dr. Lark.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would simply move the addition for consideration of the 5 goals that I suggested on July 2nd. And I can send that to the secretary. Or actually, since she's up there, I can read them for her. This would be that the first goal would be a membership goal. Let me pull this up a little more carefully. Just a second. Sorry about that. The first goal would be to have as our membership as of the, sorry, my computer's playing games with me, just a second here. The LP will have at least 20,000 sustaining members as of June 1st, 2016. Second goal, the LNC will take action to see that each state has an operational affiliate party by June 1st, 2015. And I'll be happy to discuss what we meant by, or what I meant by operational state affiliate.
By what date?
June 1st, 2015.
2015, yes, that's correct. Third goal, the LNC will raise at least $3 million from July 1st, 2014 until June 1st, 2016, and this total will include donations to the building fund. Fourth goal, the LNC will develop and approve new and revised outreach literature. That's already been set forth, so that's already been included. Mr. Tomaso put that forward. And then the fifth goal, the LNC will sponsor a series of seminars, workshops in 2015 at various locations around the country. The workshops will be structured along the lines of Success 97 seminars.
I have Mr. Hagan next and then Mr. Olson. Actually, I can't see behind me, but has the secretary finished writing those?
Right.
Okay, Mr. Hagan.
Actually, mine was going to be similar to Dr. Lark's first one. There's actually the 20,000 active donors. I don't care whether they giving us $1, $25, or it's that pledge line. It still gives us a list of people who have indicated interest in supporting the party and list that would be sent to the affiliates for prospecting for them to get donations.
Mr. Olson.
Yeah.
Sorry.
20,000 active donors as of actually, as of the end of 2015.
Could you clarify you meant $1 or more? Because we sometimes use the term active donor at $25 or more.
Oh, yeah, $1 more.
Okay.
Mr. Olson.
Okay, I realize this is rather broad. We don't use the definition, but I'd like to get it on the list. Increase the number of active county level affiliates.
By a certain amount or just wanting?
Does anyone else think we recognize to add anything to the list? Seeing none, we'll move to our 10-minute recess now. Is there anyone else trying to add anything to the list?
Yeah, we were having a discussion, Dr. Locke and I. But if we could facilitate the creation of a campus affiliate in each state.
Okay. By pick an end date.
2016.
Okay. June of 2016.
Okay, sure. Sure.
You want to hold me accountable?
End of the term.
It's got to be the end of the term.
Yes.
So seeing no further additions to the list, or no one seeking to be recognized for that purpose, will Mr. Tomaso?
No, it's okay. It can be part of the IT committee work.
Okay. So we'll move to a 10-minute recess. I have it as 10:15 right now. We will reconvene probably at 10:25. It's a recess. Talk amongst yourselves. Mr. Olson.
Maybe some people need to check out.
Checkouts at noon.
We'll be done. If checkouts at noon, we'll be done with this meeting before.
It's 10:16.
So we will reconvene at 10:26.
Yeah, so like that's why I said facility, because I realize it's kind of open, so if we can kind of, nudge
Yeah,
it.
that's, and in fact, one of the things that I have done is to try to reach out to the state parties and the state chairs to say that it would be helpful if you could have somebody who's a liaison in your state. I'll be happy to work with them. One of the biggest problems, I don't know if you've experienced, one of the biggest problems, it's a problem is probably not the right word.
Challenge.
Yeah, challenge, that's a better term. We've actually been reasonably successful at helping libertarian groups start on campus. It's just they tend to be nonpartisan. Now, which is fine, and I'll be very blunt. If I had to choose between, if a student is, if they have to choose, and I don't think they have to choose, but if they insist on choosing one or the other, I'd rather that they have a nonpartisan libertarian group because I think they'll have a bigger impact. What we need to do, in my opinion, is to do a better job of trying to get the libertarian students who are interested in party activity integrated with the local libertarian organizations, the state organizations. And what I try to do is I try to help. So whenever I get a campus contact, I always try to make sure that the state chair or the appropriate person in that state, I copy them on the response to the student. I usually will say, I copied so-and-so, for example, I copied Wendy Adams, she has to be the executive director of the Libertarian Party, because I want to make sure that the state party knows about this person. And so I think slowly but surely, we're actually starting to see some young libertarians who actually do want to get involved in partisan political activity. And the most important thing I see is making sure that we have communication. So whenever a campus person contacts me, I make sure the states know about it. Whenever the states find out somebody would be nice if they let me know about it.
Part of what I'm sort of thinking, and I agree that that's the ideal way to have it happen, but part of what I get is some states are, well, technically Louisiana was 2012, but so part of what I'm thinking is if we can, in those states where they have a weak affiliate, we can reach out to and help it. At the national level, you get a campus level college libertarian affiliate starts, that in turn could maybe help drive a greater cohesion of
You're
the
right.
state.
You're.
And if not, those guys, people maybe would, they're going to get the state affiliate.
No, your point's well taken. It may interest you to know that the group that I founded at the University of Virginia, Students for Individual Liberty, we're in our 28th year of consecutive existence. For many years, Students for Individual Liberty was the only regular libertarian organization in the Commonwealth of Virginia, other than the State Central Committee of the LNC.
Did I accurately report the date, sorry, the date on your revenue goal, $3 million?
It was 2016. Sorry.
No worries at all.
Sorry, source of the discussion up front.
Suggesting goals. The membership goal was June 1st, 2016. The June 1st, 2016, July 1st, 2014, June 1st, 2016 was the revenue. Yeah, June 1st, 2016, 3 million over the essentially 2-year period. Yeah, it says July 1st, 2014.
See, Dr. Watson?
And also, Alicia, the $3 million was not June 30th, it was June 1st, 2016.
Yes.
Well, if you're going to start a discussion, then it'd be nice to have an idea about what goals would be. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't understand part of the value of strategic planning and goal setting is to get you to think through so that you actually have a better idea of what your priorities are.
Right. That's why I wasn't trying to interject too much of what I wanted, but I wanted to make it clear, like, the reason I really want us to do it is so I know what to do.
Well, it's like, Covey talks about, again with the end in mind, which, by the way, the end in mind is actually the government.
So that's true.
But the way you get there, so but one of the, there's various ends that lead to the other ones. But, yeah, so having those things there, it's getting people, it's thinking, here, okay, if you got to know where are we going, and then you think about what's the path, what's the route we take. You got to plan the route. And if you don't plan your route, well, if you don't know where you're going, and then you don't plan your route, you usually end up somewhere you don't want to be.
Okay.
You'll end up somewhere. You have no idea. No, I understand. And the criticism, I mean, I've been having this discussion with Bill Liz had.
We don't achieve it, we don't make it.
Well, it's also the extent to which it's important when you set goals to be committed to following through. And in so many cases, again, a lot of times, one of the biggest problems we have, many of the people on the LNC are also dedicated activists.
Right.
And so their ability to focus on LNC issues and particularly to follow through is limited because they're up to their fanning and alligators at all.
Or then some.
Exactly. And so in some cases, I think a lot of times people they'll simply put off those tasks. They don't have the ability because of their jobs, because of their families, because of the other libertarian promises to develop the focus, to start focusing in on the follow-up of these things.
And that's why I think it's important for us to bring campus affiliates, the states, like, see, I'm looking here and they're talking about, there's those states that are where Louisiana was in 2012, where the flavor went. One thing that I believe has helped us, it also brings other challenges, but they're good challenges.
Honestly,
Having formed, I think we formed since, 2013, April of 2013, we formed 19 local affiliates.
Are those parish level?
Parish.
Because I think that's extremely.
And I think the two have gone, but that's part of the learning thing too. We shouldn't have done them at the time.
And that's going to happen. I mean, the main thing is, as you were pointing out, you sit down there with them. This is where ultimately you want to be. Start where you want to be, and then start to how we can reform.
This is a list of non-partisan races that are potential customers.
Doing good
We don't have that infrastructure. So, it's out of our control, but it's not if that was a priority to do.
And people who are good at strategic planning,
We would start thinking strategically about how do we do it.
To me, our goal was 300 candidates.
We've actually had basically some time where we can really focus on what we want to do. By the way, what's the environment we're seeing?
I like revenue or membership.
It's different in each state.
It is different in each state, and it's what's going to happen. We have a situation where it strikes me there are a lot of opportunities in reaching out to young people on progressive issues, individual liberty issues. I think that we have, and by the way, I come from that. You're going to put me in pigeonholes. I come from
I'm okay with that too. It doesn't get in the way of membership.
Right now,
I kind of like the ballot access bill too, just because it gives us our states
to reach out on issues of militarization of police, war.
But if that's marketed properly, that can be, you can move the minds of the conservatives.
Yes, absolutely. I quite agree. That's part of it. I actually think you're absolutely right.
Having been, a libertarian neocon forever, because I mean, it's just, one of my best friends of mine was an acolyte of Ayn Rand coming out of high school. But I believe I'm really good at being able to talk to people with that Republican mindset. Absolutely. You can't just be with the head. And the war, everybody, boom.
Our knees jerk in various settings, and I can reach out to people who are self-identified conservatives for whom issues of drug use. Because I'm a teetotaler when it comes to drugs, not because it's not my taste. My drug use is beer and wine, which by the way, my students are amazed when I tell them I didn't drink beer, I didn't drink much alcohol when I was in school. And my taste buds changed radically. I can reach out to people who come from Missouri because many of the values, in fact, most of the things that cause their knees to jerk violently cause my knees to jerk violently. I've learned to discipline my knees from jerking. And I think after fashion, in certain communities, people realize you're not part of the end, you're on their side and you're trying to accept me. Anyway, thank you. We need to talk.
No, but that's,
let's call it. Yeah.
So, we're back in official session. Hopefully we're going to have good discussions during the recess. I think it's appropriate to ask at this point if, before we start an approval voting procedure, if there's anybody who put something on the list that wants to take it off. Because the list is, just think about it. So if anyone wants to be recognized to do something like that, now would be a good time.
Would it be possible also to make an adjustment at this time?
I would find that in order.
Could we change Mr. McClendon, if this is okay with you?
92.
From 90 to 300.
And
then I would, and then based on that, I would then remove the 1,500 on-message candidates and replace it with the.
Yes.
Can we just number these items to make it easier for the approval voting?
That's a point of personal privilege, and yes, the secretary, I think, can do it.
Wow, I missed that.
That's magic. I'm gonna run through it at one.
And he's on the tech.
Right, he's on the IT committee.
What did he say?
She
You
numbered
didn't
the
see what
spreadsheet.
Parliamentary procedure.
Yes.
Would it be acceptable and more efficient if, in order to do the approval voting, we just let everyone know to vote for each one they find is acceptable and do it just by going through each one with a show of hands? And that way we just have to do, 12 votes and then sort of in rank order as opposed to having to collate a bunch of written.
I think that would be an efficient procedure. Does anyone have any objections to that procedure?
So it's just point of information. So we're going to do approval voting 1 through 15 here through a show of hands. Initially.
Initial, okay. I think we may only need one pass. We might need 2 passes, but approval voting gives us both data points.
Isn't number 1 or number 2, number 1 and number 2 are combined? As one goal.
No, they're split. That was what they were doing.
Yeah.
Is Arvin was dropping his candidate goal because McClendon had split it into two goals, one for training, one for candidates. All right, so we will proceed by that procedure. Is there anyone?
Are we still saying instead of who's driving, are we doing or something equivalent?
I think it's who's driving right now because it's a separate goal that we control about training that we give. I think that's the
that's what we're doing.
Mr. McClendon.
Yes, in other words, I want to basically do metrics on what we're already doing.
So what we'll do is we'll move to that procedure, but before we do, I'm going to just ask the secretary, what would be the most helpful thing that we could do to help you tally the votes? Or is there, would that be helpful?
If we're doing it by hands, that's gonna be easier. That means I get to stop again writing my list for the tally sheet.
Hands.
And we're just gonna put the numbers on the screen.
Okay.
And
So,
then I'll reorder
One
them.
point of maybe, I don't know what, but I think that should be 300 candidates in 2016.
Is there any objection to that?
That was saying, yeah.
Okay. All right, so once that changes,
Okay, the second.
Oh, add the space. Okay.
once that change is made, we'll proceed to a vote, approval vote. I'll just inform everybody, I will vote on these. Exercising my privilege. So we'll start with number 1, 1,000 candidates in 2016. Please indicate if you support this goal by raising your hand. Keep your hands up for just a minute. That's what I count. Goal number 2, 300 candidates trained in who's driving by 2016. Please indicate if you approve of this goal by raising your hand. Yes. Updated issue-based outreach literature. I assume that's by the end of the term. Is that correct?
Yeah, certainly better.
Or by 2015. I want to clarify it before we vote on it. I apologize. I should have done this earlier.
I would say we have something by the end of this calendar year and a whole bunch more by the convention.
So all of it by the convention.
All of it by the convention.
Okay. Yeah. So anyone, if you approve of this goal, indicate by raising your hand. We'll next move to putting tools in place to allow our presidential candidate to achieve 2 million votes. If you approve this goal, please indicate by raising your hand. Next, we'll turn to 38 state party status ballot access as of December 1st, 2016. If you approve this goal, please indicate by raising your hand. $2 million in revenue in, that would be calendar year 2015? Start that.
Cherry bomb. Cherry bomb.
He's
Cherry bomb.
If I could turn back.
This is a combined goal with calling.
The question is it Mr. Cherry Bomb or just Cherry? If you approve of this goal, please indicate by raising your hand. Elected, it's a Libertarians, right, Scott? Yes?
Well, what do you mean, partisan and nonpartisan?
Yeah, but you want them to be Libertarian. Well,
Yeah.
it's implied, but I like it to be explicit.
Okay.
I thought the goal was to reduce the number of elected officials.
So, all who approve of this goal, please indicate by raising your hand. Elimination of one federal level entity department by 2016. Approval, please indicate by raising your hand. $20,000 sustaining members as of June 1st, 2016. If you approve this, indicate by raising your hand.
Three, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Take action to see that each state has operational affiliate by June 1st, 2015. If you approve this, raise your hand.
5, 6, 7, 8, 12.
Raise at least $3 million from July 1st, 2014 through June 1st, 2016, inclusive of the building fund. If you approve this goal, please raise your hand. Sponsor a series of workshops in 2015 around the country like Success 97. If you approve this goal, please raise your hand. 20,000 active donors at the end of 2015, defined as anyone who donates to the party a monetary amount of $1 or more. Please indicate if you approve this goal by raising your hand. An increase by 10% in the number of active county level affiliate groups. If you approve this goal, please indicate by raising your hand. And facilitate creation of a campus affiliate in each state by June 2016. If you approve this goal, raise your hand.
Mr. Chairman, perhaps I will bias this by saying this will be a personal goal of mine, regardless of whether it's adopted. So
I understood as much.
So we don't need to vote.
that's right. That's right. This is not something that really needs to be on the bit because I'm going to take care of
Let's
it.
vote for
There's
it.
a couple achieve that on the list, but.
Take credit for Mark's work.
All right, so we've done all of our voting. The secretary will take a moment to tabulate and rank.
2 minutes left on this item, Mr. Chairman.
And there's only one thing left on this item, as near as I can understand, which is I would ask if the body is inclined to pick the top, a small number of the top goals that were selected, so that we don't have a bunch.
Already got a majority in a definite break. Well, six got a majority, right?
Is the break at 5? Your exams off at 5?
6.
Jen,
After
six.
6.
See that nine?
Second.
They tried to curve their off though. Let's vote for the top 3. Instead of top 2.
Bad words. Yeah. That's what, that gets missed.
So I'm gonna ask, Mr. Benedict, for point of information, do you see an issue between us going with the top 3, top 5, top 6?
I'm comfortable
Can we
with
take
those.
6?
I'm comfortable with 6.
So I don't know if the body's inclined, but if we just vote to approve the top 6, the executive director's indicated that he's comfortable with those being goals that were measured by Mr. Goldstein.
Point of information, referring to my earlier point about who's gonna take charge of these, is the person's name after each one of those, the person who's gonna take charge of these efforts if we approve them?
No, it's the person who proposed it.
Well, actually, my goal is to have the people who propose it take charge of it.
I like to point out that number 7 has definitely got a champion. Or
Yeah.
2.
Right. And as Dr. Lark pointed out, is all of these goals are really good things to do. And if you want to champion them and do them, I will not stop any board member from being a champion of getting these things done.
Mr. Chairman,
We're
point
out
of
of time, Mr. Chairman, on this agenda.
I would
extend by 10 minutes.
There's been a motion to extend by 10.
Objection.
There's an objection to that. I would ask, is there an objection to extending for 3 minutes so I can answer Dr. Lark's question? Whatever it was.
Actually, I can talk to you subsequently. We can deal with that via email, it's all right.
Is there an objection to extending by 3 minutes so we can figure out, we actually do an adoption of a particular number? So is there a motion to adopt some number of these goals?
Move to accept the top 6.
There's a motion from Mr. McMahon to accept the top 6 of these goals. Is there a second to that motion? There's a second from Mr. Vora. Is there objection to that motion? Then without objection, does anyone want this to be a roll call? No. Okay, so without objection, we've adopted the top 6 from the list that's on the other screen. I'll just give a minute for everybody to read the top 6 now that have been all reordered and make sure that there really is no objection. Mr. Benedict.
I'd just like to say thank you. It helps me. It does make it clear that I shouldn't spend a lot of money on membership prospecting. We should focus on these other things. And that truly does help me focus resources, time, and money. Thank you.
All right, we're done with this. Next item on the agenda is, does anyone need another recess at this point? Mr. Olson, yes?
Quick request, if the secretary of my electorate.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is an item I added on behalf of Region, which one's Minnesota, is it 6? 6, right, they're not here. Motion for petitioning expense reimbursement. The background on it, such as I understand it from the state party, is below the motion in your agenda. Is there?
Yes, in it. I don't think we should have that either.
You don't want to specify that.
We should specify the lawsuit in Kentucky. And you could specify Senate debate, like
Yeah,
that's
you
the
could say
debate
Senate
that we have.
debate.
But no specific plaintiffs.
Right.
No, I mean, I know who they are, but we don't need to specify
For a
them.
lawsuit related to candidate debate for U.S. Senate in Kentucky, or a U.S. Senate candidate debate in Kentucky. Okay, so it now reads, move to authorize up to $9,000 for a lawsuit related to a U.S. Senate candidate debate in Kentucky. Okay, all right, so I guess I need to get my list of people's. Okay. So I'm going to immediately pass.
Mr. Olson.
Nay.
Ms. Kirkland.
Yes.
Mr. Redpath.
Yes.
Mr. Tomaso,
Aye.
Mr. Goldstein,
Yes.
Mr. Weiner,
Yes.
Dr. Feldman,
No.
Dr. Lark,
Aye.
Mr. Estrada,
Yes.
Mr. McClendon,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
No.
Mr. McMahon,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan.
Yes.
I'll also vote yes.
I'll vote yes.
So
And-
the two passes. You vote aye. And Ms. Kirkland, would you like to call the votes?
I'll resume the gavel. Were we on time, Bill? Did we
Well,
run out already?
We didn't set a time limit on that.
Oh, yeah, that's neat.
12 to 3.
We are now at announcements.
Is there,
I didn't hear the.
12 to 3.
Mr. Tomaso?
Before we actually close and stuff, I'd like to propose that the LNC have an online discussion, or even necessarily as a level of a meeting, a web conference 2 to 3 weeks before the meeting to go over the preliminary budget, so we're not getting it fresh in December.
And this is an informal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think more than a couple hours, just so we can go over the budget before the meeting and a more formal presentation. Based on what happened last term, the first budget, going over it was a little rough. So the more we get a chance to look at it before we actually have to start making hard decisions on it. So I think 2 or 3 weeks before should be enough time for the draft budget to be done. I'll defer to the treasurer on when he thinks that'll be happen.
Yeah, we could have it, right. Ms. Mattson?
I'll just point out that the EC is supposed to propose the draft budget, so the EC is going to need to have a meeting to go through it at kind of that level. And
As long as, my point, my ultimate goal is that everyone on the LNC will get a chance to look at the budget and discuss it with whoever created it before the meeting to make that process when we're actually sitting in New Orleans easier. I think it'll be a chance for us to maybe test out some of this online, an online quote meeting.
Is it a motion?
Yes.
Okay. So it's a motion that we have an online LNC meeting to review the proposed budget 3 weeks prior to the LNC meeting in December, is that?
And is this to be a formal meeting with agenda and motions and voting, or just
The agenda will
informal?
be to review the budget, and I guess we can, I don't necessarily want us to have to worry about the voting part. The information is more important, we can suggest things, we don't take motions, so. But we obviously need previous notice, and I think it would be a good
Practice.
practice at the very least, if we don't have formal rules in place.
I see Mr. Hagan, I see Dr. Feldman, and I see Mr. Hagan. I'll start with Mr. Hagan.
2 weeks before would be November 29th, which is Thanksgiving weekend. So 3 weeks before
Yeah,
would be better, which would be
3 weeks, I think, is what I heard. Which is that right?
That would be fine.
Dr. Feldman?
I would propose,
Yes.
it'd be accepted to amend the motion just to call it an informational conference as opposed to an LNC meeting, so we don't have requirements for quorum or the other.
Is there any objection to making that amendment? I don't see one. Mr. Goldstein?
Looking at the timeline here, is there anything, at least in the policy manual, that says when the EC is supposed to hit that? Or it just says prior to the budget meeting?
I don't believe there's a deadline for the EC, but obviously it would need to be before this.
Yeah, so I mean, we're looking at a
Basically,
month
we're
before
4
the
weeks
meeting.
prior.
Yeah.
Because we need to get it to you guys at least a week before.
So that means the budget's gotta be done like by mid-November.
Right. Draft budget is usually.
Yes. Ms. Mattson?
Which, okay, there's some implications of that, of course. When you're doing the budget in November, that means you can only use year-to-date numbers through October to do it. Typically, the year-to-date numbers through October aren't really finished until about the 20th of the month or so, because that's when the FCC reports are due. And I see Robert has something to contribute to this. Is it okay to do?
Yep. Mr. Krause?
I have no problem getting it done by like the 7th of November, so we have some post and pre election FEC reports due, so October will be already half done
Okay.
by November,
Okay.
essentially.
I'm sure staff can accommodate.
Is there any further discussion on this motion? Is there any objection to this motion? Hearing no further discussion, seeing no objection, it passes without objection. Is there any other new business? Then we'll move to announcements. There's 10 minutes for announcements. Is there anyone who'd like to be recognized to make an announcement? Seeing no one, seeing.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Mayor.
Not really an announcement, other than that, I'd like to find out, when people might have, flights out tonight, when we might be able to coordinate trips to the airport.
I think we should do that informally once we adjourn. Mr. Johnson.
I have a question. You said you might have an executive committee meeting today.
Today.
Can you tell us about that?
If I may, if we don't do it immediately after this meeting, and I don't know when the gentlemen in Kentucky are available, if we don't do it immediately after this meeting, then Dr. Lark and I will participate by phone.
As would I, probably from Dallas.
Okay.
What I am going to do sometime, I mean, my thought would be that we give it enough time that people can check out, because it's 11:30, checkout's noon, and I told them if we'd finish by checkout, and we aren't going to, is that I would say that we would have it at 12:30, and you know, if we can't get Kentucky on the phone, although Ken's usually pretty easy to get, and kind of talk it out and hash out how we're gonna to work this, then we just have a very short executive committee, and then we reconvene at some point, probably in a week, to work out details. But with the LNC vote to authorize it, Wes and I can work on fundraising. I can get on the phones. Mr. McClendon can help by writing that check, and anyone else who feels so inclined and inspired by Mr. McClendon, which I'm sure many do, can come and talk to Wes or me and write a check. We can do all the legwork without having the executive committee meeting super fast, but I'd like to do it today if we can, because we're here in person, so it's just one phone call and it's not a big teleconference. So I would say that 12:30,